This week in Pure Reinvention.
And she came up and she said, I heard that you guys did some really cool, innovative things, and some people really don't like it, but I really want to learn more because this is what I felt in my heart for a long time. And it's like, bam, like you get it, and I know that there are others out there that get it too, and I think that that's what this community is really, really about.
The Pure Reinvention Podcast, episode 42. The podcast for curious professionals.
The Pure Reinvention team.
Engage, disrupt, adapt, repeat. You're listening to Pure Reinvention, the podcast for curious people.
I want to welcome all of our listeners to the Pure Reinvention Podcast, and I want to thank the Pure Reinvention team for coming back. Thank you very much for coming back this week. This is a real treat to have you back 2 weeks in a row, but we really want to take some time and share with our listeners a little bit about how the Pure Reinvention story unfolded for each of you and why you're invested in the Pure Reinvention project because of what it means to you individually and to you as you think about its merits going forward. So, Josh, take a minute, if you would, and share your thoughts on how the Pure Reinvention team actually got started in the first place.
So I was already on my Pure Reinvention journey with you. We had been working together for some time. You were my navigator, and you and I had gotten to a place together where I had elevated my perspective, but I still hadn't yet realized fully what was around me. And you brought to my attention a project that I was working on with a mutual group of people, all in a volunteer space, and how we are all having the same experience, but no one around the table was really looking up and looking to see others and if they were having the similar experience. We were all living kind of in our own bodies at that point. And you said, you should really get together with these two other people and talk to them about what their experience has been. And I bet you guys are going to have some commonalities, and maybe you can unlock this problem that you've been having. And so I met with two of the others that are around the table today. And before I knew it, I got a text message from the third person that's around the table that said to me, basically, I'm going to be at your next meeting with these other two, and I think the four of us can have really something special together.
So let me make sure I understand this. You started to realize that there were other people that were experiencing some similar stuff to you, and before you knew it, there were four people ready to sit around the table and talk about it. Is that right?
My navigator realized that there were others that needed to be around the table. I, as myself, did not realize that, but you realized that.
Thanks for the honesty,
Okay,
Josh.
yes, yeah, thank you for the honesty. So I was very fortunate to be able to hear the same story from multiple people, and it became a common denominator without question. And one of those people that was a part of that conversation was Jody Schaefer, who was kind of around the conversation and trying to understand her role in that as well. Is that kind of a fair statement, Jody?
Yeah, so I was working in the same volunteer committee as Josh and Will, and I had sort of been brought in because my predecessor had sat on this committee prior to me, and when she retired and I bought the business, I just took her seat at the table. But I sort of came in a year into the project, and so wasn't sure what the project was about or where they wanted to go, and I certainly didn't understand why I was sitting there. And I thought if I just keep going to enough meetings, right?
Sooner or later it will become clear,
I'm
right?
going to figure this out. Well, I never really did, and I started to get frustrated to the point where I thought, this isn't for me. And Mike and I had met for a totally unrelated reason, and Mike said, hey, aren't you in this group with Josh Lord and Will Carlson? I said, yeah. And he said, well, how's it going? And so I thought, well, honesty is the best policy here. And told them I didn't know what the hell I was doing sitting around that table. And they got the wrong girl. And lo and behold, I wasn't the only one feeling that way. And so Mike really encouraged me to sit down with Josh and with Will and see if we could get this thing unstuck, sort of a sidebar. And so that was the premise of how Josh and Will and I met at the Flapjack Shack one morning and hit it off. And it wasn't long before Misty joined our team. Misty knew of the project as well and was connected to it in a different way. And pretty soon the conversation wasn't about the project anymore. I mean, we figured out how to get it unstuck and decided that we liked each other's company enough. And so that's how the Breakfast Club came into being. And it was much more about just enjoying each other's company and being supportive of each other's journeys, and it just lended itself really well to this Pure Reinvention project.
So, Will, you were a part of the founding membership of this breakfast club as well. Is that how you recollect everything happening?
Yeah, I did. And I remember the early meetings, we were all kind of feeling the same way as like, what are we doing here? And, it was wonderful that you were able to bring us all together because you were hearing from different stories and angles. And, I'm just one of those crazy guys. It's like I had these really big, crazy ideas, which I tend to get from time to time, but I really needed help in terms of, translating that into the English language and translating that into something that'd be readily understandable. And, when we had the early Breakfast Club meetings were all around building a paper. And kind of a proof of concept paper, and the talent set that was involved there was just astounding, and the collaboration that and just magically how this thing organically came from just a couple crazy ideas and the three people feeling pretty lost, and
it was easy, wasn't it? I mean, that's the thing that the communication between the group and just how comfortable we all felt with each other pretty quickly, is what was really noticeable to me. That's why I kept coming back, and it sounds like you felt the same way.
Me too, yeah.
Well, and I'm the crasher, so that was that's a whole other ball game.
A little bit about me.
but back to what they're talking about and what we heard from Deb Hart last week. I didn't really know I was seeking something necessarily, but it's a testament to Mike's vision that he had met with us or at least heard our rumblings and just thought, well, I don't know what this is going to be, but I'm going to kind of make sure that they collide. And we like to talk about collisions on this podcast because sometimes it's just putting yourself in the way of the momentum to see how it pings off you and where it goes next. And the cool thing about this group is it is pinged off in countless ways. I don't even know. I mean, we all have our own irons in the fire, our own personal ventures, and then come together as a team with this meaningful thing. And that's been cool to see develop and grow.
Well, there's this interesting word, Misty, you used called rumblings, and I love that word because rumblings means there's something stirring that nobody quite understands, but it's quite powerful. And I had the opportunity to meet with each of you individually, and each of you had your own rumblings, but there was a opportunity in those rumblings for all of us to grow and develop together. And through those rumblings, we've created to date the Pure Reinvention Project, which now we're at, I think, podcast number 42. Is that about right?
Right.
And from this energy that we have been able to create, we now are on we have a new wave of energy. Mm-hmm. And that new wave of energy is helping others with their own Pure Reinvention journey.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you come to this group, or I came to this group because I felt like I was a disruptor and I was seeking more reinvention in my life. Like I wanted this kind of momentum of change to continue to build. And then when you realize that it's everywhere in your life, but you've been living just in your own head, but then you start hearing it on the news and you hear it on the radio, and then you hear it in someone's story, and then you hear it at work, and then you hear it at home, and before you know it, like you're connecting this Pure Reinvention project and lifestyle almost like to all facets of your life, and then people start saying to you, like, you're talking differently than you used to. And it's not just about what I'm saying, it's what all of you have taught me to say. And it's what all of you have taught me to believe about myself, what it's like to be a part of this community, truly, not only to seek change and want change, but to live it and experience it and find it in places in your life and teach others that they can find it in their places in their lives too.
So, Misty, what is this power of the team working together and this frequency of collision and rumblings? How does that all add together to something magical?
Something I just wrote down when we talked about rumblings was rumbling means there's dissatisfaction, and that's disruption, and that's the first step in our process. It was about just over a year ago that Mike, you, and Will and I started meeting for our own form of a brunch club, and we called it our Three Amigos meeting. So
I didn't know you had it.
We have a little secret meeting.
We've been on the outs for a long time.
We've been lied to.
Well,
look at the time, folks. There you go.
Sorry, guys, I'll pay for that one later.
So about this trust that we think is so important.
Well, yes, and that was about the time when this whole I don't even think it really had a name yet. It wasn't even Pure Reinvention yet. It was just pockets of people coming together, colliding in different ways because we had different ideas. And as we learned, everyone brought something different to the table, and it was like, okay, we need to get everyone together. We need to pull all of these thoughts in one room and kind of harness this, because there's an energy there and there's ideas there that is greater than one or two or three of us.
Can you mention real quickly too, just so how you called me for the Pure Reinvention name and like the web? Like at one point, Will just called me and he said, like, "What do you think of Pure Reinvention?" And we hadn't even thought of naming ourselves at that point.
It's one of those
and all of a sudden we were
moments.
purchasing like a URL and you're bouncing these ideas off me, and it was born that way.
Yeah, and it came out of like the Pure Michigan process, and I don't remember who coined it, but I think we coined it during the Three Amigos meeting, and the Pure Reinvention, and it just brilliantly fit.
We're often one brain now. I'm not sure.
I know. I know who originates it, but I've been an association executive for 15 years, and and it's so easy to get in that ivory tower, and there's a lot to learn in an industry, and you have to go and you have to delve deep into it, and you don't really cross-pollinate, reach out to other people in different generations and get different generational points of view. Pure Reinvention process demands that of all of us, and that's why I find it so attractive.
I'm attracted to it too in a lot of ways, and part of what you were saying was cool, because I don't know that I would have been drawn to Josh or Jody, or really had the opportunity to collide with them if it wasn't for these like-minded ideas coming out. We didn't know they were like-minded at the time. The testament to our ideas was that we chose to continue it after our work was done. It wasn't like, oh, neat and tidy, there we go, goodbye. It was like, but we have about 20 more ideas we want to explore. And that's why we realized reinvention is kind of a lifestyle and something that we wanted to embrace and really move it forward and share it with other people.
I think part of the power, Misty, of the process that we have gotten engaged in here, that the team is engaged in, is that we have all learned within our own stories, professionally and personally, that the more we try to control things, the less we really can control. And the fact that we have put this group together, that this group has come together, but without any pretense as to what the agenda should be, but to let the agenda be discovered over time, has, in a way, been slow for us to come to market, but in a more important way, stronger for us to understand why. And for us, the why is so incredibly important, because once we were able to understand the why for Pure Reinvention, we're able to share that why with the rest of the world. And Jody, I know that for you, understanding the why is as significant as the actual facts of the matter.
I was doing interviews today, actually, with a client who has the best catchphrases. And I don't know if it's because he's Southern or because he toured with, I don't know, some inspirational guy. I should probably know his name. I'm sure he's got books out. But it was a leadership guru. And he talks about success and significance, and how we all, many of us early in our career put success first. And then we get to a point where we realize it's really more about significance. And I think significance in your work, significance in your relationships, significance in your impact. And for me right now, it really seems to be significance in how I spend my time. We're all very busy. We all have our own personal ventures going, or jobs that are demanding, or family commitments, and yet we carve out time to be with this group because it's valuable, not because somebody pays us to be here. And I think that that's really important, that whole idea that we believe in a concept that's bigger than the paycheck or bigger than what's in it for me. It's about what can we do that makes a difference.
There are two things that come to my mind when you mention that. The time that you drove straight from Chicago, 5 hours to come to Brighton.
I drove to Chicago that morning to fire somebody. Not a good deal, right? And then turned around and drove back that same day.
Past your house, past your family, to come to a meeting in Brighton with all of us to talk about the work that we've been doing.
Then ordered a beer called Trainwreck. I would just like that to go on record.
Yeah. It was well deserved. That's what I felt
too
like.
Too much short or tall, and Jody's like, it's tall and it's Trainwreck. That's what it's going to be tonight. Yeah. The other thing that stands out, the whole point about, being successful versus significance, I'll never forget the conversation I had with Mike at the tap room, and he and I were talking, and I said, I've got all these awards. My LinkedIn profile is like top notch. Why isn't the world coming to me with
why don't they love me?
Why doesn't the world love me? And he'd go, and take down your awards, scrub down your LinkedIn profile, and think about more how you can create the space to where people want to be attracted to you as opposed to you forcing yourself upon everyone else to want them to want you. And for someone who achieves success readily and quickly by, doing what I've always done and this has worked, to step back for the first time and say, you know what, this is not going to work if I want to get to this next spot in my journey. And that recognition of significance versus success has been profound.
And I think you really bring up a great point, Josh, and I hope that listeners out there are really paying attention and giving us input, because we're here and we have developed this project really to benefit you. And that, we have some channels, we have some social media channels, we have the email. We really want to develop programs and develop content that's benefiting all of you directly.
This really is a passion project. I get told, you shouldn't say I'm moonlighting. You shouldn't say it's my second job, like all these things, what not to do, what not to say. But what I've rested on, and everybody's nodding kind of around me, it's a passion project. It's not because I think this is going to, pay all of my bills someday, although it'd be nice. But
you won't say no.
Right. It doesn't have to pay me, because if it's affecting change and if we can connect with other people that can understand how this process has worked for us and how we recognize it in everyday life, like Josh was saying, I think it's totally huge. And I love that that we're committed to that. I've rarely heard what's in it for me. It's how can we make this idea better? How can we reach more people? What's next for us?
The first time that really resonated with me, Misty, was after we did the CSE program at MSAE's Org Pro conference, a half day, really facilitated high-level CEOs, and we're coming out really, really jazzed. And there's some people that kind of like, wow, you just really shook the boat. And I had one of my colleagues come up to me, someone who has been unrelated to the project, not familiar with it, and she came up and she said, I heard that you guys did some really cool, innovative things, and some people really don't like it, but I really want to learn more because this is what I felt in my heart for a long time. And it's like, bam, like you get it, and I know that there are others out there that get it too, and I think that that's what this community is really, really about.
So the emerging understanding that the Pure Reinvention Project has is the world will not behave the same going forward as what the world has behaved in the past. And our passion and our interest is to try to share stories of those people who are on that journey, who have started to discover some things, and who are able to capture it and create content around that. Our initial content was the podcast that you're listening to right now. We're on, I think, number 42. And we're really excited. That means we've been at this, folks, for 42 weeks.
And more if you count the ideation and planning process.
I mean, I think that's just absolutely phenomenal that we've not only have we been able to find speakers for that many weeks, but I just handed Will a long list of continuous speakers that we need to schedule. So the podcasts have developed tremendous a sharing of content. We have been able to put that content out on Facebook. There's a Twitter feed. LinkedIn has a Pure Reinvention page. We have multiple ways, a website. We have multiple ways in which we are now beginning to share the...
That's www.purereinvention.com.
Thank you, Misty. Multiple ways that we are starting to share the content, but here's the most important and exciting one of all. Up until now, all of that content has been stuff that we have generated and we have been involved with. Josh, you and I specifically have been working in the last month to start creating some content that is starting to go external. Do you want to share a little bit about what that is?
Sure. Imagine coming to a safe place to test your reinvention spirit. Imagine coming to a place where instead of sitting in a classroom and being lectured to about reinvention, you're living it, you're experiencing it, you're touching it in an urban center in ways that simply do not exist anywhere else in this country. It's going to be exciting. It's going to launch this fall, this winter, and I think that the community is going to be really excited to see what comes out of this group.
I think one of the reasons that that's so exciting is because we have had numerous people approach us and say, we really love the content you're generating. We love the spirit in which you're producing it in. We love the focus, but we can't quite figure out what you're selling.
I even had one person, I remember they told you, I really like what you guys are doing, but I don't quite know yet what you're selling. And if that's what you all have been feeling, you're going to find out real soon, and I promise you, it is going to shake up the environment for learning in this kind of reinvention space like you haven't seen.
This is a group that's passionate about making sure that we use experiential learning that we use the city of Detroit as the backdrop for profound understanding of what reinvention is really like. This is a book that hasn't been written yet, Josh. This is a book that will need to be written for what is coming, not for where we've been.
Well, and it's not a book, and maybe that's the difference. So many times, the classroom, the learning, the experience is based on an actual physical book. And the whole idea here is that every time you show up, you throw out the old page and you start with a blank page. And we literally had a blank page in front of us as we're doing this podcast because Josh and I and Will, coming around the other side of the microphone, are new to this. And, you know, the temptation is to script it, but that is so against what we're all about. And so here we sit with blank pages, figuring out as we go and finding a few gems along the way.
So I'm sitting at a conference not too long ago, a national conference where best practice leaders and industry professionals from all over the country and maybe even the globe gathered for learning. And the speaker starts off by holding up the big red book. This is the way that you leaders will go through and meet your challenges in today's competitive environment. And everyone's sitting on their cell phones. Everyone's doing something else, scrolling through while someone else is talking about a book. There is not a book. There is not a script. This is real life, and I think this group, if you look at us, if you listen to the conversation, represents what this is really all about.
I'm chuckling because Jody and I are writing notes as we're having this conversation just to remind us things that we want to say, because they're right. There is no script. We are literally making it up as we go. But it's because we can speak freely about this and don't need a script because we all understand it. We all get it. And that's such a cool community to be part of, which is back to building our reinvention community and being part of something greater and not being alone. What I really like about our team is that we have laughs, we get along, we understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, but it's not always kumbaya, happy we all get along. We have opinions, and sometimes it's frustrating and there's friction, but we've accepted that as part of the process. We know we're only going to get better if there is some friction, if there is some real conversations and some kind of pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and taking a hard look at what we're doing.
And it's the central point about this whole thing is to be yourself and to build and be true to yourself in your building of your career. And you know, what I loved about Mike, and from the moment I met him, it was always to take your strengths and build upon those strengths. And you run into most consultants, and you run into most who are trying to get you to conform to the book, in that big book. And you're trying. And I've spent my professional career trying to conform to a book, and I don't conform to a book. As you guys know,
Will's tagline is "quirky, not creepy."
Exactly.
And so the book.
And so I am home here.
There's no book.
So and that's the beauty of this approach.
Yeah, we probably haven't done Mike enough justice in this conversation. He's kind of played the moderator and continued the conversation, and that's a good example of what he's been for all of us. But I know that we all meet with him personally. We all talk to him, not just about PureReinvention stuff, but what's going on in their lives, professionally, personally, and he's done a great job. And it's his insight, and we joke that he had a master plan putting us together. He kind of already saw this vision. There's probably some truth to that. He has not admitted it yet. No, he won't. He won't admit it, but we believe it.
Well, whether I admit it or not, it was very attractive to me to be around other professionals who had the same passion and the same conviction and the same understanding. And I honestly felt if we were able to put our energy together and we were able to coordinate our activities and create some focus, we could make a huge impact in creating a new book, in creating a new experience, in helping others understand what we have been able to discover and understand individually and collectively. And it's been a real privilege to be a part of this. And quite honestly, the best is yet to come. So if you're ready for a change, make it a change that lasts. Make it Pure Reinvention.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pure Reinvention. Keep the conversation going and get alerts when new podcasts are up by following us on Twitter at Pure Reinvention or sign up for our mailing list at purereinvention.com.